It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter.
Let's
Here's
start
Tony
with the University
Reale.
of Tennessee and the unhiring of Greg Schiano. Have you ever seen anything like this? The school backing out of the Memorandum of Understanding and planned announcement last night after blowback and protests on campus. Schiano's history at Penn State and proximity to Jerry Sandusky to focus. The coverage of this has been all out. Some calling out social media mob rule and calling the vague Sandusky hearsay ties a convenient smokescreen to what the fan base determined to be an underwhelming hire. Tennessee Athletic Director John Currie released a 5-paragraph statement today saying they vetted Schiano, then not saying why he wasn't hired. If that brought anyone clarity, you can speak to that. Woody Page, we're going to start with you because this is your alma mater and where you started your career. How should we consider all this?
Well, Rocky Top has hit rock bottom. I think this is the most disgraceful and worst period in the history of Tennessee football. It's irrelevant now. It has been for 9 years, and this latest episode makes it even worse. And I don't know how exactly they're going to pull out of it, but I have a couple of ideas. But they should have done a better job. They should have put together a blue ribbon panel to choose the next coach. And he probably should have been a coach that had Tennessee connections. They've tried to go outside. Philip Fulmer played there. He led them to a national championship. Since then, they've gone, the Lane Kiffin and other people that they brought in, and it just hasn't worked out. So that led to what we're seeing right now, that they went out.
But let me interrupt for 1 second, Woody. This isn't a story because they hired a guy that maybe wasn't the best for the program. This is a story nationwide today because of what some perceive to be mob rule, mob mentality, a smear campaign on the man they were going to hire. How do you view that?
That's why I'm saying it's disgraceful, because they're using what happened at Penn State and triple hearsay information instead of what the truth is. They don't like his record at Rutgers because they're not familiar with Rutgers, and they certainly don't like what happened at Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers where he failed. He hadn't been a head coach in 4 or 5 years. He sort of disappeared under the mat as a defensive coordinator at Ohio State, done a great job there. But once again, Curry's background with the coach made him think this is exactly the right hire there because of what Ohio State's been able to accomplish. Well, no, it wasn't. You needed somebody with Tennessee connections and try to become an SEC power. This is a worse team in the SEC right now.
Let's bring in Kevin Blackistone here.
Well, I just think that it's clear, one thing, that the AD, Curry, just did not vet the people who support the University of Tennessee, the fans, the boosters who financially support it, and that's why this all caved in. And you know what?
So you're saying vet the fans, vet the fan base?
Absolutely. Send up a trial balloon. It happens all the time. You send out some names that, we're thinking about talking to this person, we're bringing this person for an interview, and then you get a sense of the temperature of that person among the fans. And particularly at the University of Tennessee, which just recently settled a multi-million-dollar lawsuit involving sexual assaults on campus and their poor handling of it, you would think that they would be a little bit more sensitized to bring in somebody with the background of Greg Schiano, the fact that his name was brought up in a deposition around the Sandusky case that we learned about just a little over a year ago by the key witness in the entire Sandusky affair. And I think that's a very, very serious thing, and rightly so, would make people uncomfortable.
So you believe fans were right to voice their protest the way they did in the last 24 hours? You do? Okay. Frank Isola, how about you?
Well, his name is Greg Schiano. It's not Jerry Sandusky. It's not Joe Paterno. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach that they wanted, the ex-Bucs coach, is John Gruden. This is what this is all about. Greg Schiano went 68 and 67 at Rutgers. He took over one of the worst programs in the country and turned it around. He did a good job there. Urban Meyer is not just hiring anybody to be defensive coordinator at Ohio State. This is about who this guy is, an outsider from northern New Jersey who they don't want. And then the fans turn into a witch hunt about something else and painting on a rock that he covered up child rape. That's a conspiracy. Where's the police investigation? Where are the federal indictments? I mean, come on. What Tennessee did here is disgraceful.
Mina Kimes?
I think we need to dial back some of the hyperbole here. We're not talking about ending Greg Schiano's career. We're talking about whether a program that, as Kevin just said, recently went through a massive sexual assault scandal should have taken more care before bringing on someone with Greg Schiano's history. Now, I don't like how the fans handled this, and I don't think we know nearly enough to presume that Greg Schiano knew what happened. However, that said, if they did vet him, as they're claiming they did, they should have publicized it. They should have tried to get in front of this issue at Tennessee. I don't see how the program there didn't anticipate this sort of backlash. They have mishandled this from the beginning, and they should be held accountable for what's happened.
What position, Woody, in your opinion, is Tennessee in right now? And because you think they look so bad here, is it a job another coach would want, is I guess what I want to ask.
Well, there are a number that would still like to coach in the SEC, and I think you can go out and get somebody. But Curry's job, I think, is on the line here. He's the one who was responsible for messing it up, and I think the administrators, of the chancellor of the school has got to say, you should be gone. In regard to who would take this job, at USC, the offensive coordinator, T. Martin, was the quarterback following Peyton Manning that got them to the national championship in the first BCS championship game at the Fiesta Bowl. I think he would be a perfect guy. Jim Bob Cooter, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator.
But to the point, you don't think this will scare away other coaches. Frank, do you agree with that?
I don't know if it will because it's still a lot of money, but, the SEC, here's a place, where they listen to administrators and they listen to their fans and then they're firing Butch Jones during the season. In the SEC, not even in the NFL do they do this, but in the SEC, everybody gets fired. Somebody will be right for the job. My question is, who is going to pick the coach? I'm not sure it's this current AD.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll move on. Let's talk about the hires from the weekend. Chip Kelly, UCLA. Dan Mullen, Florida. And let's throw in the could-be, might-be hire, Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. Aggies reportedly ready to offer a big deal for Florida State's head coach. Frank, which has the biggest chance for being a home run?
Well, I think Chip Kelly can be, but I want to say this about Dan Mullen. He's the second choice at Florida, but you look at his history, offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer. They won a national championship. He's worked with good quarterbacks, actually great quarterbacks, including Dak Prescott, Tim Tebow when he won the Heisman Trophy. But when I look at Chip Kelly out of UCLA, not as much pressure as the dog-eat-dog world in the SEC. Plus, he's recruited at California very successfully at Oregon. Now he's there. I think this could be a home run for UCLA.
Same question to you.
Chip Kelly is the highest variance option here. He's either going to be a home run or flame out terribly. I think Jimbo Fisher, if he takes that A&M job, is most likely to be successful. He has the record. In 6 of his first 7 seasons, he won over 10 or more games. He has been successful against ranked opponents, unlike Dan Mullen, who's also a great coach. And he's walking into a good situation. Texas A&M is like a jar that's just been almost opened over and over by Kevin Sumlin. Jimbo Fisher's going to walk in there and the lid's going to pop right off.
All right, so if Texas A&M's a jar, what is Florida State, which has won a national championship in recent history?
It's like an empty cup.
It's an empty cup. It's a trophy at some point because they won it. So you would take Texas A&M over Florida State if you're Fisher. That's interesting. Woody Page, how about you?
You like money.
That's at best a lateral move. I don't know why in the world he would make it other than if he just wants a ton more money. How much money can you spend? Dan Mullen is the guy here. Chip Kelly, yes, that could be make or break out there at UCLA, but I think he's going back to a conference where he was very successful and could be very credible for UCLA. But Dan Mullen has a history in the SEC, as Frank pointed out, and you could talk about Mississippi State and saying, well, they didn't win any national championships. Do you know how hard it is to recruit to Mississippi State, to get a Dak Prescott to come to school there? I think it's a case of where he goes back where he's got such a fertile recruiting area. They know him. They know how successful he was at Florida. It's going to be the big time for him. He's going to win a national championship.
And Kevin Black. Ooh, you're predicting a national championship for Dan Mullen at Florida. Okay, good. I'm going to write that one down. Kevin Blackstone, any of these 3 hires?
Absolutely. I second what Woody just said. Put me down for a national championship with Florida, too, with Dan Mullen.
All right. I'm taking orders here. Any other national championships
He's already put some rings on people. Frank mentioned the fact that he's worked with some great quarterbacks. He's a quarterback whisperer. Turned Alex Smith into a number 1 and a first-round draft pick. Dak Prescott, you already mentioned. The kid who he's working with at Mississippi State, who almost pulled off an upset the other weekend. This guy can coach. The other thing he's an offensive turnaround genius. Florida's offense right now is it's in the 100s. That's ridiculous. He will have them in the top 20 in offense within the next 2 years.
You better. You have him winning a championship, so you better get into the top 20.
Ranked opponents.
All right. Multiple panelists picking a championship for Florida on this Dan Mullen hire. Interesting. All right. Good. This is going to be good when we look back at this in a few years. All the college football you just talked about, not a game mentioned yet. Let's talk about this incredible weekend. 1, have the Auburn fans gotten out of the shrubbery yet? B, what will tomorrow's rankings and, more importantly, next weekend's rankings give us? Miami can erase this weekend's loss with a win in the conference championship game versus Clemson. You know that. But Alabama can't. They have to wait on all the conference championship games, and they're waiting on what you're saying right now, KB. Nick Saban thinks he has a shot in the playoff here. Do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. So they lose one game to a team which has already knocked off the #1 team. They're in the SEC. They were ranked in a couple of the polls #1 going into this game. Look, it's Alabama. They can't be blamed for who they've played and all the teams that they've beaten. No, they can't be. I mean, they don't go out and make up their own record, their own schedule.
They do make the schedule. They don't make it this year.
Not up the SEC. In the SEC, they play what they get, and that's what they got, and they beat everybody except this one team. So I think that things will work out, and they will wind up in the
you were shaking your head
Final
no.
Yeah, you only can beat the teams you get to play, right? But they did face a good team this weekend, and guess what? They lost, and it wasn't close. They lost very convincingly. Going into this weekend, they had the 63rd hardest schedule in college football, according to Sager and Kevin. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't good enough. They had the opportunity on this weekend, and they blew it.
Frank Isola?
Well, Kevin's getting cocky now because Northwestern has a longer winning streak than Alabama. It's still Alabama. They still have brand recognition. Remember that. And go back to last season. The president
brand recognition? Is that what we're working with here? They're competing against Ohio State. Does Ohio State have brand recognition?
Ohio State did not play in the conference championship game. Penn State did, and they sent Ohio State. So if I'm Nick Saban, I'm thinking the same thing. You want me there? I got one loss. I lost on the road at Alabama. I'm going to be one of those.
So you take a one-loss Alabama over a two-loss Ohio State, should they beat Wisconsin and be a conference champion? Yes. You take a team that didn't even win the division in their conference. Woody Page, same question to you.
Frank, they were wrong last year taking Ohio State. When you got to win the conference championship. You got to at least play in the game to win the championship, and Alabama now is out of there. I mean, it would take Ohio State beating Wisconsin, for Oklahoma to lose to TCU, for Georgia to beat Auburn. That's not going to all happen, and it shouldn't happen anyway. You've got teams in there. Auburn, what have you done for me lately? They've beaten back-to-back #1 teams in the country. Oklahoma has had a great schedule. They are with one loss. If Ohio State does win the Big Ten, they deserve to be there this year, not last year. So there's no chance for Alabama, and there shouldn't be.
It's almost like this whole system would benefit for a greater playoff. It's almost like that. Almost like the 1AA of years past, my Fordham Rams and other teams that play in the playoff.
You're a soccer school now.
Maybe that's where we should be headed. We're taking a break right here. Buy yourself next 2 minutes. What, an 18 playoff? Who says no? A 16? Pete says he won't be making a change at quarterback. He's got a lot else to look at. Mina Kimes, you make the case for or against the Chiefs benching Smith for rookie Pat Mahomes.
Pablo, if you're watching, it's time for Pat Mahomes, man. Look, Alex Smith is an average quarterback. At the beginning of the season, he was the best version of himself. Over the last few weeks, he's been the worst version of himself. Since week 8, he's 29th in QBR, 32nd in air yards per attempt. He is not the only reason they're losing, but he's a big part of why. Defenses are stacking the box against Kareem Hunt because they know Alex Smith isn't going to do anything.
So you'd make the change.
Time for a change at quarterback. They need to spark this offense.
Please, anybody with a DVR, make a GIF out of that point from Mina Kimes. It was like a 1980s PSA. Go ahead, Woody Page.
Mina, this is not the San Francisco 49ers. It's not early in Alex Smith's career, and they replace him with Kaepernick. This is Kansas City that's still leading the division. He did have a bad month, November. 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and no victories, but he had a great September and a great October, and he can bring it back for...
We're still in November, and we're going to December. Let's go to Kevin Blackistone here.
Can't get to December fast enough. You know what? It's not about changing the quarterback right now. It's about throwing that playbook out of the window. Those highlights you just shown, those little short passes, that's just what Mina talked about in terms of yards per attempt. They've got to throw the ball downfield to give all those little fast guys some room to maneuver.
And you would do that with Mahomes or Smith, Kevin?
I would do that with Smith.
Frank Isola, how about you?
Yet, when Kaepernick replaced Alex Smith, it worked out pretty well. Alex Smith, sub-40 quarterback ranking. 4 of his last 6 games are 1-5. The future is right now. Make the change.
Fire sell 2. Rams 26, Saints 20. Woody Page, you learn more about L.A. in the win or New Orleans in the tough road loss?
The Saints are a good team. They had that long winning streak, but we're learning more and more every week about how good the Rams are, a team that was irrelevant for so long. Wade Phillips is doing it again. Every time he goes somewhere, he improves that defense. They sacked Brees 3 times. First time that's happened all season, and Goff has become a legitimate big-time quarterback.
Kevin Blackstone.
Yeah, we're learning more about the Rams. I mean, everybody knew about Brees. We know what their coach can do, but you weren't sure that the Rams were the real deal, and they just showed you they are the real deal, especially because of that defense.
Sola?
Yeah, this was a big moment for them. The Saints, national television. We keep waiting for Jared Goff, the Rams, to turn into a pumpkin. Maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe they'll get a home playoff game. Imagine that. Pretty cool at the LA Coliseum.
The Saints were missing both their starting corners, so I don't think we learned that much about the Rams' offense. The defense, on the other hand, was in Drew Brees' face the entire day. Sacked him 3 times. He went 3 for 13 on third down. If they can keep that up, they're taking that all the way to the playoffs.
Woody Page, you want points because you had the sacks stat first? There you go. You know what? It is your stat. You'll get the point. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3. Crabtree. Talib. Round 2. Chains. Last year, Crabtree said he made a business decision not to fight. This year, business changed. And business was booming for the referees. 3 ejections here. Kevin, ejections enough, or you think the NFL should do some suspending here?
No, they should stick with the ejections, hit them with some fines. No need to suspend them. These 2 guys have a beef. They've met twice this year. They're not going to see each other again unless it's on a street corner somewhere. And that,
well, it's entirely possible when you got guys throwing punches. One had a helmet on, the other didn't have a helmet on.
Why do you have to wear jewelry in a football game anyway? Someone explain that to me.
Well, he cares about money, so you suspend him and Talib.
Akeem Talib.
Akeem Talib. For 1 game, both of them, that'll hit him in the pocketbook instead of stealing change and fighting. It's a bad look for the NFL.
Mina Kimes.
Should have worn 2 chains myself today. Look, I do not think increasing the ejection to a suspension would really disincentivize guys from fighting. It's important to remember, fights are rare in the NFL. Unlike hockey, baseball, they're not built into the sport. This doesn't actually happen that often. Let's not freak out about a couple fights.
Woody Page.
Has to be suspensions on both sides. Talib has a history. Keep in mind, they can't meet on a street corner. They're both from Dallas. They go back there all the time and get into trouble, Tony. That's where Talib shot himself. He wasn't suspended for that, but he has been suspended for poking somebody in the eye. Crabtree, this is his first time, but he did it on back-to-back plays. Chris Harris and the family jewels, and then on the second play, he got his jewels taken away from him. You got to suspend both of them.
We waited all show for that one.
He did wait all show. It was the game he covered. Who knew? Brady or Wentz?
Sometimes the boring answer is the right one. It's like how Julia Louis-Dreyfus wins an Emmy every year for Veep because she should. That's Brady. He has 600 more passing yards than Wentz. He's played a harder schedule by almost every metric. He deserves it. Let's not ignore
Mina,
it.
sometimes the boring answer is the wrong one. Wentz plays in the stronger conference. You would agree with that. Stronger schedule, not those weak sisters in the AFC. And he's 28-5, touchdown, interceptions. Most blitz guy in the NFL. He is under blitz. He has thrown 0 interceptions. Nobody expected this.
That's news I can use. The most blitzed quarterback in the NFL, and he's feasting on it. We'll give the point. So Woody Page.
Schedule.
Showdown 2, most impressive performance of the college basketball season. This isn't a hold-up all year. Alabama played with 3 men for the last 10 minutes Saturday night because of ejections, foul out, and injury. They outscored Minnesota 30-22. They lost the game by 5, Woody, but if Alabama finds himself on the bubble, you think this game will be a plus or a minus for them?
It's got to be a plus that you can actually go out. It's like a double power play in the National Hockey League, 3-on-5. Look at that zone defense they were running, how effective it was. And they outscored Minnesota 30-22 with 3 against 5.
It's clearly a plus. As Frank outrageously said earlier about Alabama football, brand recognition matters. And Alabama basketball built their brand this weekend. They were trending on Twitter. Everybody was talking about it. It will help them if they're on the bubble.
If Frank was here right now, he'd say they ran the triangle. We'll give the point in game to Woody Page.
A rare occurrence in Los Angeles. They had no teams before. They have 2 teams now. They both played at home on Sunday. And guess what? the officials from both games were in the same hotel with me, and they were sitting around talking, and I thought, I want to get some inside information. So I crept up, I talked to a couple of them, I listened, and the guy said, oh, you just got back from London. How was it? And he said, well, I saw Big Ben. I thought he thought it was about Rossberger. No, he's talking about going to Scotland, playing golf, seeing the London Tower. Human people. Referees are humans. They don't all talk about games.
Breaking news from Woody. So the inside information you got was that they went to Big Ben and it wasn't Roethlisberger, it was the clock. Nice, Woody.
Happy Hour is presented by Sky Vodka. Please drink responsibly.